Hello and welcome to Nightmare Masterclass. My name is David Stockdale. I'll be your host on this excursion into the dark unknown. Well, folks, I've been out of commission for a while. Let's just say my colon got turned into a semicolon. Footnote, actually, my colon was removed. Back to the show. Anyway, I'm starting to get back into the swing of things, and I just saw a wonderful film by the name of I Saw the TV Glow, directed by Jane Schoenbrun. The film had a limited theatrical release. I'm pleased to say I was able to see it in theaters. If you haven't been able to see it yet, the movie is now available on VOD, and I'd highly recommend you check it out. I've been following Jane Schoenbrun closely ever since happening upon We're All Going to the World's Fair, which I also did a video about. If you haven't seen Schoenbrun's previous film, it's definitely worth watching, especially if you're a fan of the stuff I cover on my channel. I Saw the TV Glow strikes me as a spiritual sequel in certain ways. A lot of the reviews of this movie focus on Schoenbrun's ability to create a mood, and while that is certainly worth mentioning, I think it's important to clarify that this film is not just a series of moody vignettes. It's about something. It has a totally coherent narrative. It operates by a strange sort of dream logic, but there is a logic to it. The film is working towards a cohesive end, and the mood-setting efforts serve this overall purpose. Perhaps it will be more clear after a thorough analysis, specifically with a focus on the story. There are going to be spoilers from here on out, so please do watch the movie prior to moving forward with this video. I highly recommend this one. Towards the beginning of the film, we meet Owen, a shy 7th grader. Owen meets Maddie, a 9th grade goth girl. The year is 1996. The two attend a school called Void High. One night at a school event, Owen expresses interest in a book that Maddie's reading. It's an episode guide to a TV series called The Pink Opaque, hosted on a channel called the Young Adult Network. Obviously, this is analogous in many ways to a channel like Nickelodeon. Owen hasn't been able to watch The Pink Opaque yet because it airs past his bedtime. 10 p.m. on a Saturday. Ugh, this poor kid. Owen seems daunted by the prospect of asking his dad Frank to stay up to watch the show. There's a silent tension whenever Owen is around his dad. You get the sense that he's frightened of him. The film subtly conveys Owen's fear and the authoritarian dynamic in his family through these interactions. This detail hints at Owen's repressive home life and foreshadows the character's perpetual struggle for autonomy. The setup also establishes the television as a conduit for identity and self-discovery. Maddie is more than willing to fill Owen in on the detailed mythology of the Pink Opaque. The show is about two teenage girls, Tara and Isabel, who are psychically linked. This link somehow imbues the two with otherworldly powers. Together, they use their powers to fight various foes. The show has a Monster of the Week format reminiscent of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Though importantly, the girls have an arch nemesis by the name of Mr. Melancholy, who takes the form of the Man in the Moon. It's interesting, a film that is expressly about media, after all, it is called I Saw the TV Glow, features a character based on a highly influential film from the dawn of the age of cinema. I'm speaking, of course, of A Trip to the Moon. And I just want to flag that for now because I think the figure of Mr. Melancholy is important to the central metaphor that is built over the course of the film. Owen tells Maddie that he isn't able to watch The Pink Opaque at home due to the whole bedtime conundrum, and Maddie contrives a scheme. In the following scene, Owen tells his mom that he's staying over at a friend's house, but instead he goes over to Maddie's to watch The Pink Opaque. This episode features an unsettling ice cream man, a sort of twisted, monstrous version of Mr. Tasty from The Adventures of Pete and Pete, a live-action TV show on Nickelodeon. Maddie and Owen's eyes are transfixed by the TV screen. Maddie tells Owen that sometimes the Pink Opaque feels more real than reality. Owen and Maddie don't talk much after that. Their interactions are limited to awkward glances in the hallways of Void High. 2 years pass. It is revealed that Owen's mother is terminally ill. Owen timidly asks his parents to stay up past 10 to watch The Pink Opaque. After a tense period of silence, Owen's father says, "Isn't that a show for girls?" After learning that Owen still isn't able to watch The Pink Opaque, Maddie starts to tape the program for him. Owen talks with Maddie on the bleachers. He asks her if she wants to watch The Pink Opaque together again. Mistaking his invitation for a romantic gesture, Maddie clarifies that she is attracted to girls. Owen assures her that he is not interested in her romantically. He then confesses that when it comes to that sort of thing, he feels as though a part of him is missing. Maddie suggests that Owen is perhaps afraid of what might be uncovered upon a bit of introspection. At this point, it's fair to say the character we know as Owen is extremely repressed. He is extremely quiet, and one gets the sense that he's been abused by his father. If not physically, then certainly emotionally. And I would argue that imposing restrictive gender norms on a child who is merely attempting to express their interest in a harmless show is a form of abuse. Though perhaps the show is not entirely harmless. Perhaps it is a danger, not to Owen in this case, but rather to an oppressive status quo represented by an older form of media, aka Mr. Melancholy, the man in the moon. There's a lot of evidence to support this interpretation. Let's continue. The two watch a new episode of The Pink Opaque. Maddie draws the symbol from the show on the back of Owen's neck in the exact same position the symbol is shown on the two main characters from the show, Tara and Isabel. Maddie then expresses her desire to run away from home and urges Owen to go with her. He reluctantly agrees. Later, Owen attempts to wash away the mark on his neck. He clearly does not want other people to see it. Owen chickens out, and Maddie leaves town by herself. Shortly after this, Owen's mother dies, and The Pink Opaque is canceled at the end of its 5th season. 8 years go by. Owen still lives with his father, and he works at a local theater. Owen accidentally stumbles upon a coworker having sex with a woman in the office. Later, this coworker, played by the great Connor O'Malley, razzes him a bit about never making eye contact. Owen appears uncomfortable. One night, Maddie returns and brings Owen to a bar on the outskirts of town, a location that also appeared in The Pink Opaque. She tells him that she disappeared into the show itself, which leaves Owen highly confused. And we get the sense that Owen is suspicious that perhaps Maddie has lost her mind. Maddie then urges him to recall the show's finale. Once he has done so, she asks him to then meet her at their high school the following night. Owen seems to interpret her explanation as a sign that she is suffering from some kind of mental illness. He expresses concern, but Maddie insists that she is relaying the truth to Owen. Owen then recalls the last installment of The Pink Opaque. Spoiler alert, it's kind of a downer. In the final episode, Mr. Melancholy removes Isabel and Tara's hearts. He then feeds them his poisonous Luna juice and buries them alive. At this point in the film, it becomes more and more apparent that a certain kind of symbolic language is being developed here. Even if you didn't fully understand previously, what was the subtext of this film now starts to boil over and make itself clear. It is worth asking at this stage of the analysis what Luna juice is exactly. And, well, I hate to break it to you folks. The answer, per usual, is ideology. When Owen internalized his father's comments about The Pink Opaque being a show for girls, Owen was effectively made to drink Luna juice and forcibly bury a part of himself, a part that is integral to his sense of self. And so Owen doesn't have a clear sense of self. Recall that when he opened up to Maddie, he expressed that he felt a certain emptiness, a certain void where something should be, but is not. That is the void where his identity should be. Later, we will learn that it is a particular facet of Owen's identity, namely gender, that has been repressed. Owen remembers the episode's conclusion, and there seems to be some kind of recognition that his situation is similar to the experience of being buried alive, just like Isabel from The Pink Opaque. When the closing credits appear, Owen panics. In his distress, he shoves his head through the TV screen. It's almost as though Owen wishes to be completely sucked into the static of the television screen. Owen's father then forces him out of the broken TV set and takes him into the bathroom to wash himself. Owen protests and subsequently vomits a substance eerily similar to the so-called Luna juice from The Pink Opaque. Aha. Owen is protesting and refusing to ingest the false ideology fed by his father and other societal factors. Now that this memory has been uncovered, it clearly haunts Owen. The following night, Owen meets with Maddie again, this time on the high school football field. Maddie explains that after running away from home, she went to Phoenix, Arizona. While her environment changed, the underlying emptiness she felt back home, the titular void in Void High, did not resolve. Noticing a theme here? It would seem that Maddie and Owen inhabit a void, a cultural wasteland, where you are very quickly categorized and judged based on the restrictive norms of a prevailing monoculture. Because they are pressured to hide a part of themselves from the public, Owen and Maddie feel a sense of emptiness as a result. Maddie then explains that she paid a guy to bury her alive. After a gruesome experience culminating in her own suffocation, Maddie regained consciousness in the Pink Opaque, the show. She then assumed the identity of her true self, Tara. She explains to Owen that the world they currently inhabit is in fact an otherworldly prison known as the Midnight Realm, and it was created by none other than Mr. Melancholy. Paradoxically, Maddie explains that in order to escape the Midnight Realm, they need to bury themselves. This will allow them to return to the Pink Opaque, assume their true identities as Tara and Isabel, and start season 6. Owen starts to recognize the truth in Maddie's explanation, but he then reacts in a defensive manner and runs home. He never sees Maddie again, and the possibility that she was right haunts him. A few years go by and Owen's father finally dies. Good, hope he rots in the fucking ground. Owen inherits the house and starts a family. He gets a job at a Dave & Buster's type restaurant. He happens upon the Pink Opaque on a streaming service and tries watching it again. It's nothing like he remembers it. For starters, the show is significantly cheesier than he recalls, and it's nowhere near as frightening. Decades pass. Owen is visibly aged and appears to be suffering from asthma. During a birthday party at his workplace, he has what appears to be some kind of horrific panic attack and starts shouting that he's dying. He begs his mother to save him. He locks himself in the bathroom and makes an incision in his chest. He smiles upon discovering a glowing TV screen inside. As he exits the bathroom, he apologizes to his coworkers and various guests for his outburst, attributing it to the effects of new medication. They casually ignore him, and then the credits roll. So, what is this film really about? You could say quite a few things here. Youth, memory, friendship, alienation, repression, missed opportunities, wasted potential, transformation, etc. To state the obvious, it's very clearly an allegorical work about the experience of being queer and transgender in the suburban hellscape of 90s America. Any interpretation of the movie that fails to centralize this is obviously off the mark. The film's engagement with gender and sexuality transcends straightforward representation. Instead, it explores how identities are constructed, performed, and policed within specific cultural and temporal contexts. The characters' struggles are not just personal, but reflect broader societal negotiations of gender and sexual norms. It is quite subtle in its delivery, at least for the first 3/4 of the movie. I said before that I Saw the TV Glow is a spiritual sequel to We're All Going to the World's Fair. Let's talk about this film's connection with the director's previous work. Obviously, both films are coming-of-age narratives with elements of psychological horror. But the similarities go beyond that. For starters, both films explore themes of isolation, identity, and the impact of media on young people. In World's Fair, Casey uses the internet challenge as a way to explore her identity and potentially connect with others, similar in some respects to the manner in which Owen and Maddie engaged with the Pink Opaque in I Saw the TV Glow. Additionally, both films play with the line between reality and fiction. In Schoenbrun's previous film, the protagonist's participation in the internet challenge blurs the line between performance and reality. In I Saw the TV Glow, Owen's very sense of reality is called into question as the character is forced to come to grips with the fact that they've been living in a hellishly mundane prison disguised as reality. Most importantly, both films offer a nuanced look at how media consumption can be both a coping mechanism and a potential avenue for self-discovery for isolated individuals. One thing I think the film highlights quite well is the manner in which media was consumed and disseminated in the 90s and early 2000s. You can understand why a lot of millennials might romanticize this period. Young people's relationship with media was radically different, in large part due to the limitations of technology at the time. When an episode of your favorite TV show aired, you either had to watch it as it aired or pray to the Lord that one of your friends taped it. And if not, you were probably SOL until it aired as a rerun months later. This is not a novel observation by any means, but it's worth mentioning because I think this film is, in part, about how media often serves a social function, which is especially important for those who, for one reason or another, don't have much of a social life outside of bonding with other misfits about, that weird TV show you both like. Such media has a compensatory function. It helps to alleviate feelings of alienation, which are an inevitable result of living in suburban America, in this case, as a queer youth. Because of this, one might argue that the film invites viewers to reflect on the impact media has on our own lives and identities. This is certainly true in a very broad sense, but it doesn't really get to the heart of why this film is so clever. As I've stated previously, there is a dream logic at the core of this film. And if you follow this logic, it really enhances the experience. So let's talk about it. Let's start with the pink opaque, because I think this TV series, or at least what we can glean from the various clips shown throughout the film, can serve as a key for understanding the rest of the work. The psychic bond that Tara and Isabel share is of utmost significance. The protagonists of the pink opaque are able to defeat their enemies not only by working together, but also having an intimate understanding of what's going on in their companion's head. Their power is derived from this link. If I had to distill the film's meaning, for lack of a better term, it would have something to do with this psychic bond. The link shared by the two protagonists in the pink opaque represents the very real link shared by Maddie and Owen. Mr. Melancholy is attempting to sever this link by making both Tara and Isabel, who are stand-ins for Maddie and Owen, drink Luna juice and then try to bury them alive. The takeaway here is that those who face oppression can have power if they connect with one another. Something like that. It's interesting to note that when Owen watches the pink opaque as an adult, Tara and Isabel are completely absent from the scene. Why is this? At first, it seems as though Maddie and Owen have been conflating aspects of reality with this fictional TV series. Because both Maddie and Owen seem to have experienced some degree of trauma, they have scrambled up scenes they remember from the show and real-life memories. But this is something of a misdirect because, as it turns out, Maddie is right about their reality, their prison. The metaphor of burying oneself alive or being buried alive has a dual function in the work. On the one hand, Maddie arranges for herself to get buried alive. Following the logic of the metaphor, she has to kill her false identity in order to assume her true identity, Tara from the pink opaque. On the other hand, within the context of the TV show, Mr. Melancholy buries Tara and Isabel alive in order to sever their bind and therefore disempower them. If you try to think about this in literal terms, you're going to have a bad time. Again, the film adheres to a sort of dream logic reminiscent of David Lynch's work, namely films like Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway. Mr. Melancholy has created a so-called midnight realm. In this realm, the pink opaque is depicted as a merely fictional series, a frivolous show for children. At first, it's unclear what Melancholy's intentions are, but the effect of depicting the pink opaque as a fiction is that Maddie and Owen doubt their own authentic reality as queer, transgender, and/or gender nonconforming individuals. Additionally, the so-called Midnight Realm imposes its distorted reality through societal pressures, affecting how Owen and Maddie view themselves and their world. Owen is shamed by his father for expressing interest in the pink opaque, since, it's a show for girls. And Maddie loses her best friend and seems to be ostracized at school due to her sexual orientation. Every attempt for the central characters to assert their individuality is met with hostility of some kind. There are a number of aspects about this movie that you might think are highly open to interpretation. Let's take, for example, the fact that Owen's experience watching The Pink Opaque on a streaming service as an adult is completely different from his experience watching recorded VHS copies of the series on his analog TV as a kid. We can discern a relatively surface-level interpretation of this phenomenon. In some sense, this is a very common experience. In some of my more nostalgic periods, I've attempted to watch Are You Afraid of the Dark as well as Goosebumps. And while there is a certain charm to the low production values and cheap effects, not to mention the Ryan Gosling cameo, these shows weren't anywhere near as compelling as they were when I was watching them as a child on a small TV set in my bedroom. When it comes to I Saw the TV Glow, we can easily derive a general observation about nostalgia and the folly of trying to relive the past. But this isn't quite what's happening in the film. What's actually happening is that Mr. Melancholy is attempting to rewrite history by framing the Pink Opaque as a cornier, more childish version of itself. This is done in order to make Owen, or the character we know as Owen, question their true identity. It's like some kind of twisted form of psychological warfare. In some sense, the Midnight Realm continually attempts to banalize the truth in order to minimize it and diminish the idea that these characters have any individuality that they can express freely. Upon an initial viewing, one might be forgiven for thinking Owen's breakdown at the end marks a break from reality. However, this crucial scene actually depicts the protagonist coming to grips with reality. The character's been living a false identity their whole life. It's a painful realization. The character's life is just passing them by. In the Midnight Realm, time goes by quickly, causing the protagonist to age prematurely. In this moment of clarity, the fiction of the Midnight Realm is briefly undone. The veil lifts, as evidenced by Owen's co-workers and the birthday party guests becoming catatonic for a moment. Something in the Midnight Realm breaks at this point. The following scene, in which Owen discovers a glowing TV inside him, isn't merely a metaphor used to represent media's influence on people. In the context of the story, it's a literal revelation confirming Maddie's assertions. Maddie's narrative that the Pink Opaque is not just a television show, but a gateway to their authentic existence, turns out to be accurate. Yet Owen is only able to recognize and process this truth for a few moments in the bathroom before he has to return to the task of performing this false, imposed identity. It's entirely understandable to feel a little ambivalent after having watched this movie. It doesn't end on a good note. Maddie, or the person we the viewers know as Maddie, is able to escape this false reality. The protagonist isn't able to. And this is the sad truth of life under the homogeneous culture of suburban America. If you're really following the logic presented by the film, it's just a really, really sad ending. Not entirely without a silver lining per se, but still, it's quite sad, and it's okay to sit with that sadness and accept it. Sometimes films make us feel uncomfortable in order to achieve a certain end. The important thing to me is that for one brief moment, despite the efforts of this Mr. Melancholy, the power of, I don't know what you would call it exactly, but the power of some kind of utopian potentiality shines through, literally. And to be fair, that does speak to the potential for media to occasionally land on some profound truth and even bring people together. That wraps it up for this installment of Nightmare Masterclass. If you want to support me on a monthly basis, go to patreon.com/Nightmare Masterclass. Thank you for watching, and good night.